So, what is up for this weekend?
Just heading back to the res.
Oh, cool.
Sometimes I forget you're even native.
Heard Madison was coming home this weekend.
Oh, yeah?
You guys are good though, right?
We're fine. She's family.
Hey, Goose. A bunch of us are going to the Duffy. You wanna come?
No.
Cheers!
Cheers!
Well, well, well. Madison Sands, you're still a slut.
Am I under arrest?
No, I am driving you home. Let's go. You're beautiful. You know that?
Until we understand what we're up against, I want to be the one controlling the narrative.
What do you think's gonna happen?
I have no idea.
PC Boyd sustained a severe head injury.
You didn't deserve this.
I'm very sorry for what happened to you. To both of you. It was self-defense. Who's gonna believe that?
Nika! Where are you going?
The bush.
Well, then I'm coming with you.
Check it out, I got your favorite. A sushi.
What's the rodent situation?
Chief, we are just here to do an investigation.
We have a cop in the hospital, and we need cooperation or things are gonna get ugly.
Things are already ugly.
Police, open up!
We used to be best friends, remember?
I'm looking at attempted murder.
Attempted murder.
They put a cop into a coma. What do you think's happening here? We gotta find those girls and bring them in as soon as possible.
No matter what happens, you are my sister. I love you. I love you too.
So, hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks. This is the YouTube channel / podcast where I, your host, Carolyn Hines, film culture critic and journalist, speak to film critics around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today, I'm very happy to be joined by filmmaker Eva Thomas to talk about her second feature film, Nika Madison, which is premiering this year. And I'm so happy to be talking to you because I feel very strongly about talking to filmmakers from the Indigenous community. And this film is very much about the Indigenous community, but most importantly, Indigenous women here in Canada and the trials and tribulations of being a woman and an Indigenous woman in Canada. So the film centers around two friends, Nika and Madison. Are they cousins? You know, they're cousins.
Besties,
They're
yes.
cousins and besties.
Yes.
Nika Madison. Madison is in Toronto. She goes to university in Toronto, and Nika lives on the reservation. But something extremely unfortunate happens where Madison is assaulted, and the film kind of follows. It has this in the press notes, it calls it kind of like inspiration by Thelma and Louise, and it has all of that, you know, female friendship going on a road trip, but it's a road trip sparked by an extremely dire situation. And as a woman, this film made me, I was so tense almost the entire film. But the first half of it, I was very anxious. And especially the scenes in the car, we'll get into that. But first of all, I just have to thank you, first of all, for talking to me and for making a film like this, which I think is very important. So thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to speak about my work, and I appreciate that you watched the film, that you felt the tension. It's great because that's what I was trying to do. So I'm glad that it works. Thank you.
You did a fantastic job building the tension. But first, we have to discuss. So the film is based on a 2023 short film called Red Lights, and you kind of changed up the premise for the film a little bit from the short film to the feature, because in the short film, it does focus on the Starlight Tours, which began in the 1970s, where Canadian Mounties, or police, would take Indigenous people into the wilderness and leave them there to suffer and die alone. Yeah. And that's where Red Light kind of follows that vein, whereas I think for Nika and Madison, you kind of focus more on the terror is more of men. Of this is the wilderness is like being exposed to a man and being potentially raped and killed by a man, a police officer. So talk to me about making that change from the short film to the feature.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that went into that shift, if you will. The first one was that I was really surprised with the short film how many people didn't know what a Starlight Tour was. That it really surprised me. So there's a bit of an educational component to the film, and in sort of discussions with people, a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, they were going to assault her, right? They were going to assault her. And in my mind, I was like, no, they were just going to leave her out there. That was what I was always thinking. But it was said to me so much that I was like, oh, well, what's that about? The second thing that kind of inspired that switch was I had the opportunity to be a consulting producer on a documentary called Dark Highway, which is about sex trafficking up and down the 401. And that freeway goes by 10, 15 Indigenous communities. So there are a lot of Indigenous people that we interviewed for that movie. And many of them talked about how police, sadly, were some of their biggest clients. And that really disturbed me and shocked me. And I was like, oh, I think I have something to say about that. And then the third thing that also encouraged that switch was my actress in the short film, Ganyo Theo Horn, who also worked with Ellyn Jade. She was scheduled and slated to play Madison in the feature, but then she got pregnant and went off to have a baby. And so then I had to recast, and I was like, okay, then since it's going to be a new actor, let me just switch the dynamic in the story here. And so those are the sort of things that caused the shift to happen from the short to the feature. But I think if you watch the short and you watch the feature, there are threads that you'll see that are. So when I watch, I'm like, oh, that reminds me of Red Lights. Oh, that reminds me of Red Lights.
Yeah, I did watch the short film, and so like you do keep the friendship there, but an interesting change that I thought with regards to their relationship is the distance between them physically. In Red Lights, the original Nika and Madison, like their friendship is tight, like there is no separation. Whereas in this film, Madison went off to university, and that created a emotional and a physical distance to them because Nika is stuck on the reservation, and her being stuck there is a choice, but it's a choice found created by another traumatic experience. So I thought that you doing that change was really interesting to show how best friends over time do lose touch with each other, you know, and having it be symbolic of the differences in life between reservation life and city life, and how that can change their perception of what it means to be Indigenous. Talk about that, because Madison, she kind of lost touch with not only the people in the reservation with Nika and her uncle, but she lost touch with her community, she lost touch with her sense of self, and without even realizing, but more importantly, I think she lost touch with the culture and nature. And I love how you kind of like brought that back and talk a lot and included the discussion of technology, where Nika was like, I do not trust cell phones, and I'm like, you know what, Nika, you are correct. And she had a reason for it, and her reasons are extremely logical. And me being a person from the Caribbean and living here in Toronto, I related a lot to both Nika and Madison. So talk about that change, because I thought it was a really interesting way to talk about culture and distance and relationships.
Yeah, and that was certainly purposeful. What I was trying to do was a bit of like city mouse, country mouse, or res mouse, city mouse, and that 50% of Indigenous people live off reserve, and they're living in urban communities. So a lot of people do live in the city, and if you don't go home, you do kind of disconnect. But there always is this pull home. There's always this. I live in the city. That's my home. But I also have my home on the res is my home too. So we have this dual sense of home. If you're an Indigenous person living in the city, and certainly Madison has created a whole life for herself here and has been exposed to things and tried things and new clothes and new foods, and so she's been able to grow in a way that I think Nika hasn't, because of her trauma and how she's protecting herself and keeping hidden a little bit on the res. And what I was trying to do there was to show the impacts of trauma, how that it does affect our growth, how it does affect our choices when we're not able to kind of fully come to terms with it or heal from it. And I think by the end we see Nika going down that path of healing.
Yeah, because the thing is with Madison, she loves her life in Toronto. She loves her life going to university, but she, as an Indigenous person, she still faces the discrimination, whether the blatant or the people call it the micro and the macro aggressions. I always say if it's aggression, it's macro completely. It's aggressive. But she has like this interaction with this white girl that she's going to school with, and her friend. She talks about, you know, like they do have access to Wi-Fi, but it's spotty, you know, and anyone who knows how the government and these companies kind of like leave Indigenous communities to the wayside to fend for themselves. So like Madison is hinting at that, she's talking about that, but then the friend is like, thank you for educating me, sometimes I forget you're Indigenous. I was like, It's a small scene, but it says so much because it shows that even Madison, she may try to tell herself like life in Toronto is perfect. It's not.
Yeah.
You know,
and she's struggling.
And she's struggling.
She's struggling. Yeah, she's struggling in the city with school. She's got a little bit of OCD, so she's the class and the test. She's struggling. And then through the course of the film, and they're able to rebuild their relationship. They're able to share. Because the thing about humans is we don't just come off. I just met you and tell you the things that I'm really struggling. It takes time. Relationships take time, that trust takes time, and they had to rebuild that trust in the course of the movie. And then by the end, I think we meet them and they're really far apart. But by the end, they find their way back to each other.
Yeah, they kind of speak different languages, They're speaking in the same language, English, but they're speaking different languages culturally, And I thought it was interesting the way how you structured the dialogue, you and your co-writer, Michael McGowan, the way you guys structure the dialogue is like they are speaking two completely different languages, And I thought it was really interesting. And I think a lot of it, to me, I kind of read it like when Madison reveals that she has ADD, I'm like, that makes sense. Because she's struggling, but she's also in a city that's hyperkinetic and all this movie, and she's like, she doesn't know where to go, whereas on the reservation, life is a bit calmer, so she's kind of struggling. So like when she comes back home, like Nika kind of doesn't pick up on that. So I wanted to ask you, did Nika know that she has ADD, or was this a diagnosis she got in school?
I don't think that in my mind, Nika didn't know and didn't know that she was struggling. So when Madison finally does share that with her, I think that's news to her. Yeah, and also because the relationship is a little bit distant at the beginning. I just don't think they're talking on a regular basis. I don't think that Nika knows that that's what's going on. In the same vein, like I know that Madison doesn't know what happened to Nika. And there are some things that are hard to share. Yeah, and I think both of them have things that are hard to share, but through the course of the movie, they are able to.
And so I wanted to talk a bit now about the whole tension, building the tension as a director. Yeah. Because from the moment we see this police officer, as you would say, my sixth sense started saying to me, I'm like, this is gonna go bad. And and so like she gets in the car, and like there's this thing that I think you do that Star does so well, is where she's using humor as a deflection and as a protective, because she's trying to ingratiate herself to this cop, because she's trying to let him know, I'm your friend, don't harm me because I can be funny with you. And that's something that women do all the time. That's something that we learn. It's a protective thing where we're trying to joke off. We know we're in a very dangerous situation, but we try to appeal to the better side and the humorous side of these people. So talk about that particular scene, because that whole entire sequence in the back of the car where he's like, you're not under arrest, but why am I in the back of the car then? And then he turns around and uses the threat of arrest against her. And like, I was just tense the entire time, legit watching that entire sequence. So talk about building that sequence and working with Star and the actor and just like getting that to work, because the camera switches from both the front seat to the back seat.
Well, I think that in some ways it helps that the audience knows that something's not right here. And so the audience is like, okay, I feel uneasy. And going back and forth, not only from like the front of the camera to the back of the camera in the cop car, but also jumping over to Nika. And is she gonna make it? Is she gonna get there? Oh, this is getting bad. Oh, now she's really in danger. Where is Nika at? So the back and forth, I think, creates a tension that you really are just want to like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Is she gonna make it? Is she gonna find her? Is she gonna get hurt? So I think it really does create this like sense of like, what is going to happen? And my hope is that you do feel that sense of tension or fear, because I think that's what she's experiencing on the screen.
How did you work with Star, just like getting her to move through those emotions? Because again, she moved from humor to fear, back to humor, back to fear, and then she's having this freak out once everything that happens and Nika, right? So talk about just working your way through that sequence with her, because I think that's the most emotionally intense sequence in the film. A lot happens after, but that's the one where her fear really does manifest itself.
Couple of things is casting. Casting someone who could do both the comedy and the drama, I think, is really important. And then also casting the cop was also really important. And for me, with Star was I shared with her, this is the guy that I like. How do you feel about him? Do you feel okay? And so like I got her to not approve, but to be like, to watch the tape and like, yes, I feel like I'm safe with that person. And spent, we had a stunt coordinator who worked with us on the scene, on the assault sequence, and intimacy coordinator, and they worked really closely. And what I really appreciate about the work and the movie that we made is how careful Star and David took care of each other. David, who plays the cop, they really took care of each other. And I was always aware of what I was asking them to do. I was fully aware of what I was asking them to do, to go there, to have the emotions. For David, I remember meeting him and saying, like, I really need to protect you because I know what I'm asking you to do is difficult, and I know that this character is not who you are. And for me, it was really just about creating that dynamic between the three of us, alongside with our stunt coordinator and our intimacy coordinator, and certainly our DP and camera operator as well, that we all knew that this was going to be a difficult scene, and so that we approached it with sensitivity, and we approached it with a plan so that Star had a way to say, I need a moment. Like, there was always an out for her. And I think that helped her feel loose enough to be able to do that with the work. She's great. She's great in the movie, and she's really great in those scenes.
She's great, but I have to thank you for having an intimacy coordinator, because unfortunately that is still not a standard in the film industry, which it should be. But so me personally have to thank you for including an intimacy coordinator, and I think the cast really did a fantastic job. Talk about like I saw in your previous interview, like you mentioned, Star and Ellyn are friends in real life, and that does come through in their dynamic on screen. But talk about, like, well, some people might want to talk about, it's so great to work with friends who are actors. Talk about, are there any particular challenges to working with friends who are actors? I'm
sure there are challenges, though they were never articulated to me. I'm sure there are challenges. You know what's also really great with Nika Madison is that Amanda Brugel and Shawn Doyle, this was the third project that they had worked on together. Yes. And so I wouldn't necessarily, maybe they are friends, but they had a history together. And because of that history, I think it makes for an interesting dynamic on camera. And so I think you can meet someone and get a professional trust going. Yeah. I think that's very possible. And actors are professional, so they'll make it work. They'll create dynamics, they'll create relationships. But if there is a previous relationship, there's so much built in to that dynamic that it really makes my work as a director quite easy.
Do you think that's something that's kind of unique to the Canadian film industry? Because it's kind of a very small, I wouldn't say a super small community, but it's a small community where, like, I have seen Amanda and Shawn in the same projects, right? And I know Amanda was in the Handmaid's Tale, but I know Shawn from the Expanse, you know, so, which one of my favorite sci-fi shows ever. But like,
even with like Gail Maurice and Billy Morasti and Jennifer Dempsey. Those actors were in Aberdeen, which is a film that I co-directed. Certainly Nika and Madison, my first solo directorial film. But because I had a trust with them, and I liked working with them, and they hopefully liked working with me. And I remember when I was talking to Jennifer Dempsey, I'm like, I'm a little bit worried about casting, the same people in the film. And she's like, Quentin Tarantino does it.
I was
like, okay, well, then I'm gonna do it too.
I was gonna say, like, those American filmmakers are always talking about they have their muses, and they work with the same people. But and I actually think it's good, because it's like, not only do you build a rapport as friends, but also as co-workers, and it helps you. Like, being a director is so stressful, like having one less thing to have to worry about. Which is like learning to trust your performers and your crew, because as well, like, you work with similar crew as well. That makes the process just a bit easier, not only for you but for everyone involved, right?
What's really great about, because Nika Madison, Red Lights Nika Madison, it was always a short to features project. That was how I designed it. I set on the journey to make the short film and then to make the feature. But what was really nice about that is many of the people who worked on this short came along for the journey on the feature, and that's really wonderful to be able to work with people that you like and enjoy and you like their work. And now, okay, we did such a great job on that project, now let's do another one. So a lot of the people who worked on the short came along for the feature.
And in talking about the people working together, like, I mean, when we've been talking about Amanda Brugel and Shawn, like, their characters are they're not friends, they're co-workers, but they begin to build a friendship sort of over the course of the film by working through this case. They started kind of like on opposite sides, because Amanda's character, Detective Timmons, she, as a woman, is immediately suspicious of this cop, like something of his history isn't adding up. And of course, I'm not going to spoil everything, but like, that's where, again, the film, I think, really talks about how women, no matter what situation they're in, no matter what position they're in, whether they're a university student, whether they're a young woman on a reservation, whether they're a police officer, there's still this thing with patriarchy that they have to battle with somehow, some way. And she may not be getting opposed because of her position as a woman, but she's getting opposed because as a woman, she's not being believed by what she says she's hearing and what she's understanding. And so that creates this tension between, this separate tension between a relationship between Timmins and Wardhurst, played by Shawn. So that's another aspect of relationships in this film. Talk about their relationship and like how like trust has to be built, but it's not built easily because like she's like, I'm a woman, I know I'm following my woman's intuition as well as my intuition as a cop.
Yeah, and I have to give a lot of credit to both Amanda Brugel and Shawn Doyle, who, when the casting director said we should go out to them, I'm like, haha, they're never gonna do my little movie. But like they graciously did, and both of them, because they're such pros, had really strong ideas about the characters and really invested in them and said, Eva, what about this? And brought things and really fleshed out those characters to make them feel like real humans. And even though Shawn and Amanda have a previous relationship and they're a trust between them, and they're certainly not friends in the movies, but that trust allowed them to be more combative because they trusted each other. They could go there in a way that I feel like it's harder to do with someone that you just met. Like if I know you and you know me, and if I say something to you and I'm like come in with you a little bit more aggressive, you can absorb it a little bit more because you trust me. And I think that worked for the film because they had this dynamic that worked.
Right, because one of their first interactions is when they go to the reservation and they're met by the blockade by their reservation chief Sampson, who is a woman, which I love. But like they're like, you can't get onto the reservation without a judicial warrant, proper cause, and unless we give you permission to. And that's for anyone who, and that's I think an important thing to add to the film for anyone who's not familiar with reservation life and the communities and how they're treated. Like they have, it's sovereign land, so they have ultimate say. And she's like, we will not let you onto the land. But what happens right after, there's a line where Timmins mentions the Oka crisis. And I thought that was a brilliant way to mention like the ability for Indigenous people to control their land was actually literally hard fought. You know, they had to fight, and they're still fighting. But like the mention of the Oka crisis says like this is something that could quickly turn into a firestorm if you and this is Simmons talking about her, say if you don't control yourself. She's like, if you don't watch your step, you will spark another war. You know, and talk about that because I thought that was really important and necessary to mention.
Absolutely, and I think that's another reason why I was really keen to have a BIPOC actress in that role. It's because just like a female character or female person, human, they have different experiences, they see things differently, and I really thought that a BIPOC actress with that experience, it lended something to it. That's why when she says to the chief, you and I know that this can go bad. It's because as a Black woman and as an Indigenous person, there's history there with the police, and there was that she saw that in probably a way that maybe somebody who wasn't BIPOC maybe wouldn't have had that lens or had that instinct or even had that compassion.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that because I love when films are very topical with regards to like talking about women's rights, talking about Indigenous rights, but like you're all like filmmakers always make sure to mention like where we are now is something that began years ago. You know, like we didn't just like everything that we have now, it wasn't easily accomplished, and we're still trying to accomplish that. You know, and like again, that's about the struggles for these women. Like being in the back of a cop car, that's still something that women are still struggling with. Indigenous women, like we're wearing red for missing and murdered Indigenous women because like missing women are still being kidnapped, they're still being murdered. You know, they're still going missing daily, and this is still something that happens not only in Canada but across North America to the US, and even in Greenland. Like I follow like stuff that happens in Greenland too with the Inuit there, and like this is something that is still needs to be contended with and spoken about in society. So I wanted so just talk about how the film overall encapsulates all of that, because there's a scene again, like I love paying attention to dialogues, like where Madison asks her uncle, played by Bill Moresti, do you trust Chief Sampson? He's like, I trust her as a chief, but I don't know if I trust her completely. And I thought it was so interesting for him to admit, I don't know if I trust my own reservation chief. You know, and like you're talking again about the politics of it all. Like there's so much politics involved in this.
Yeah. Well, and also I think was it because the chief was originally a male. Was originally written as a male, but then my sister was elected chief of our community right before we went to camera, right before I cast it, and I said, I want a female chief too. And so that was really wonderful, and of course I love Gail Maurice, so any opportunity to work with her, I'll take it. But yes, and I think the chief has to understand that they have multiple responsibilities. That a chief can feel compassion for one person, want to help that person, and I also am guardian of this community. So I think that I think it's a difficult road to be in, no matter who you are, no matter what community you're in. And yeah, I mean, also just because sometimes police don't abide by those rules of sovereign land, and they kind of do sometimes what they want, and so in some ways I think that distrust is there because of years and years of experiencing things that would make us distrustful. Yeah.
And I think that kind of encapsulates the film, right? It's about trust, you know, like do you trust yourself? Do you trust your neighbor, your cousin, your uncle? Do you trust the police? Do you trust even like your connection to the nature or lack thereof, you know? Because there's also a lot of underlying theme of misunderstanding people and misunderstanding culture, and a lot of that comes through disconnect. And I think the film, there's so many themes in this film, and I love that you and like your co-writer Michael McGowan like were able to put all of these different themes in the film and the dialogue, in the things the characters say and in the things they don't say, but in the actions that they do, you know, like the fishing, like, you know, looking for the mushroom, where you even mentioned like even just like gentrification in a way. She's like, this mushroom is like $5 in the supermarket. I was like, yes it is. But I want you to just say something to just wrap up, to say how much this film means to you, to go from red lights to this, to see the final culmination of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I started on this journey, I hadn't directed anything at all, which was the reason I was like, okay, I'd seen a few people, particularly Dennis Goulet, who I was associate producer on, and when I watched her direct, I was like, oh, that's what I want. That's what I want to do. It was the first time I was on set for that length of time, so I could see a director really working.
This is on Night Raiders, right?
Night Raiders, yes, okay. That's right. And so I hadn't even directed anything, and so I said, okay, well, I'm going to make a short, and it'll prove to people that I can direct. I didn't know that I could direct. I really didn't. I just hope and a prayer. But then the film did really well, and it premiered at TIFF in 2023, and it screened at over 30 film festivals across the world. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I am good at this. And then to make the feature, I'm really proud of myself that I had a goal, that I was able to achieve it. I'm really blessed by all the people who came around, both in the short and the feature, to make it happen. And I'm really just proud of the movie that we made, and I'm glad that I could tell a story about two strong Indigenous women to apparently a sold-out audience on Sunday.
And I'm so happy for you. Congratulations to you, the cast, Ellyn as star, the entire crew, everyone. Thank you so much for making this film, and thank you so much for taking the time for speaking to me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm glad that we wore red. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.